Hello, everyone. Let's begin this story in a small room filled with sheets of scribbled paper. On one of those papers, there's a sketch of a bald boy with an arrow on his head. In another corner, there are drawings of monks, dragons, and strange symbols. Around 2001-2002, two animation creators, Dante DiMartino and Bryan Konietzko, were sitting together trying to come up with something different. At first, it wasn't about elements. It wasn't about a vast world. It wasn't even about an avatar. Bryan was sketching a bald boy with an arrow on his forehead. His visual inspiration was a mix of many things: comics, East Asian art, and even documentaries about Shaolin monasteries. Michael looked at the drawing and thought, what if this boy is the only person who can save the world? And that was the beginning of everything. They didn't want to create an ordinary cartoon. They wanted to build a world that felt real, a world filled with culture, philosophy, and moral conflict. They were inspired by Japanese anime such as Neon Genesis Evangelion, as well as films from Studio Ghibli created by Hayao Miyazaki. But they also wanted to bring a unique identity, a blend of Chinese, Japanese, Tibetan, and Inuit cultural influences. Then came the big concept. The world would be divided into 4 nations: water, earth, fire, and air. Each nation would have the ability to control its element, a power called bending, and only one person could master all 4 elements: the Avatar. When they first presented this idea to Nickelodeon, many people were unsure. An American cartoon with an anime style? A serialized story involving war and genocide? Would children even understand it? But precisely because it was different, the idea was accepted. And in 2005, the world met a young boy named Aang for the very first time in Avatar: The Last Airbender. Producing animation is never a quick process, especially for a project this ambitious. The series Avatar: The Last Airbender officially premiered on February 21st, 2005 on Nickelodeon. But before it aired, the team had worked on it for years. Interestingly, much of the animation was produced by South Korean studios such as JM Animation and several others, while the story writing and creative direction remained in the hands of Michael and Bryan in the United States. They conducted extensive research. The martial arts movements in the series were not random. Waterbending was inspired by Tai Chi, earthbending by Hung Gar, firebending by Northern Shaolin, and airbending by Bagwazong. Every movement carried its own philosophy. They even hired cultural consultants to ensure that the symbols, clothing, and architecture felt authentic. Then there was the music. Composer Jeremy Zuckerman and his team created a soundtrack that blended traditional Asian instruments with modern elements. The result? Music that felt both epic and deeply intimate. However, the journey was not always smooth. During the early part of the first season, the ratings were not particularly high, but slowly, viewers began to connect with the story. They loved Sokka's humor, Katara's strength, Zuko's emotional journey, and Aang's innocence. What truly set the series apart was the depth of its storytelling. It wasn't just about elemental battles. It was about forgiveness, responsibility, and loss. 3 seasons, 3 years on air, and one finale that is still widely considered one of the greatest endings in television animation history. When the 3rd season ended in 2008, something unexpected happened. The series didn't fade away. Instead, it grew even bigger. DVDs sold millions of copies. Rerun ratings skyrocketed. Fan communities expanded rapidly across the internet. Avatar was no longer just a children's cartoon. It had become a pop culture phenomenon. Many critics even consider it one of the greatest animated series of all time. This success led to a spin-off series titled The Legend of Korra in 2012, telling the story of the next Avatar, Korra. However, the journey to the big screen was not as successful. In 2010, director M. Night Shyamalan released a live-action film called The Last Airbender. Financially, the movie earned hundreds of millions of dollars at the global box office, but critically, it received heavy backlash. Fans felt the story and characters had lost their original spirit. Even so, the popularity of the animated series remained strong. In 2020, when the show arrived on the streaming platform Netflix, a new generation discovered Aang for the very first time, and once again, it started trending. From a business perspective, Avatar is a goldmine. Revenue doesn't come only from television advertising. There are DVDs, Blu-rays, merchandise, graphic novels, comics, action figures, and video games. The sequel comics published after the series ended have sold hundreds of thousands of copies worldwide. Altogether, the franchise has generated hundreds of millions of dollars. More importantly, its intellectual value continues to live on. Recognizing this enormous potential, in 2021, the creation of Avatar Studios was announced, a studio dedicated to expanding the Avatar universe. Michael and Bryan returned to lead the project, which means this world is far from finished. In 2024, a new live-action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender was released on Netflix. This version aimed to stay more faithful to the original material while expanding the world we already know. From a simple sketch to a universe with millions of fans, from the idea of two creators who loved Asian culture to a global franchise worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And behind it all lies a simple message: balance. That the greatest power does not lie in fire, water, earth, or air, but in choice. The choice to forgive, the choice to change, the choice to become better. And perhaps that is why Avatar never truly disappears, because every generation always needs someone to remind them about the balance of the world. And that story began with a small boy with a blue arrow on his head. Thank you for watching this video until the end. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. If you have any thoughts or opinions, feel free to share them in the comment section below. See you in the next exciting story.